Hello guys, how's it going? My name is Dalaran. We got some rogue changes and rogue updates for us to take a look at. All the changes to Shadowlands for rogues as of right now. So in this video, I really just want to dive into rogues, and I might make a separate video talking about all the other different classes and what are some of the big changes they're having. But let's first talk about rogues and everything that they're getting as a new feature in Shadowlands. Now this changes isn't something we can test in the game right now. I don't think I have alpha as of this moment. I checked only recently, but these are the changes that Blizzard have put up on their website, and we're going to take a look at all the changes they have written down on this new update. Very exciting stuff. I took a look at it really quickly, and for the most part, this is going to be my very first reaction to major changes that rogues are getting in next expansion. Starting off with Rogue, we have general changes. The two specializations of rogues share the teachings they've learned while mastering their vicious skills. Assassins teach the basics of poisons, allowing sub and outlaw rogues to once again coat the blades with instant, crippling, and numbing poisons. I do wonder if wound poison will come back for PvP as well. The lost art of well-placed shiv in a target's side allows a concentrated version of poisons to infect the target for a short duration. Looks like rogues are going to be taken off enemies and rages in Mythic Plus dungeons. Pickpocket, and this is why I like that, will frequently uncover new ingredients that can be mixed into your Crimson Vial, augmenting its power next time rogue drinks it. I love that little change to flavor of rogues pickpocketing to make a Crimson Vial more of a steroid rather than just a heal. I like this change so far. Let's take a look at the individual specs on their own. Assassination rogues continue the mastery of poisons with the return of Shiv, providing a moment of increased nature damage to the victim, mirroring the gameplay of Toxic Blade. So Toxic Blade is basically baseline for Assassin rogues, but also all the other rogues. Continuing the read, their poisons will be stronger and applied to their blades faster than other rogues, along with always infecting targets when attacked from stealth. Assassin also gains access to ambush back as their option from stealth. Blindside talent also changed to give Assassination a chance to allow ambush while out of stealth with a higher chance on lower health targets. I like that gameplay change. Shiv also gets access to another upgrade through Toxic Blade talent, reducing its cooldown, providing more frequent assaults, increased nature damage. I feel that Assassination rogues are going to be pretty base. I mean, they've always were base rogue, the original rogue, and the change with Blindside with ambush is going to be interesting. I think this is the one rogue spec that's not going to have too many changes going into this expansion, but it's definitely going to feel a little bit better having baseline abilities like Toxic Blade. Basically being baseline offers a lot more opportunity for different talents in the rogue. When it comes to Outlaw flavor text, ever resourceful and hungry for an edge, Outlaw rogues have traded their common points requirements for Roll the Bones for a modifiable cooldown which can be manipulated to line up with their staggering finisher moves. Frantic Combat will reduce the cooldown of Roll the Bones through Restless Blades by spending common points. So not having common points tied to Roll the Bones, but rather have it on a cooldown means you don't need to build common points, roll the bones. You kind of just roll the bones, what buffs you have. You won't really be able to do much about it until you build common points and use them on finishers to do damage, which I guess would give a different playstyle. It has it more damage focused than buff focused. You roll the bones, whatever buff you have is what buff you have, focus on damage after. I wonder how well that'll translate. I think that might feel a lot better than having to build 5 common points, roll the bones, 5 common points, roll the bones, 5 common points, roll the bones, and instead just be like, roll the bones and start doing damage. Hey, my roll the bones is back up, let's roll it again, let's go back to doing damage. Whatever buff I have is what I play with, but don't worry about it. They might even change how many buffs you have. They might even take some out to only have damaging buffs in there, like the auto attack, extra damage and extra common points, or the crit chance. So this is going to be interesting to see how that feels, but there's no way to tell how good it is until somebody gets their hands on the spec and really plays it. Now, talking about the rest, we have here Kin the Shot returns to Outlaw's toolkit with Between the Eyes, making their foes more susceptible to the critical strikes instead of stunning them. This means that Between the Eyes is no longer a stun, and all of a sudden Outlaw now has a debuff mechanic, making enemies more susceptible to their critical strikes. So it seems like a personal debuff. So as Outlaw, you'll be building up common points Between the Eyes to put a debuff on the enemy, and then build common points to dispatch him as often as possible, while rolling the bones whenever those are up in order to maintain a buff. Kin the Shot returns as a PvP toolkit. Well, I mean, I guess you can use it in PvE as well, but Outlaw has a massive toolkit. In dungeons, we have constant stuns to lock down an enemy, which is huge. And in PvP, we had a ranged stun with Between the Eyes, That also worked with cooldown reduction, so it was like a 30-second stun cooldown, but it never was really 30, it was like 15 seconds, while every other rogue had a 20 to 25-second kidney shots. This is going to be huge, and this is going to change Outlaw in PvP. First of all, having a baseline toolkit as every other rogue might mean that Outlaw might actually do more damage. Because if Outlaw has a lot of crowd control with between the eyes, that has a range, that does damage, and has a short cooldown, Blizzard probably nerf some parts of our damage output in PvP because of that, because we have way too much control, we can't have insane damage and control. So with this change, by making between the eyes a debuff for us to maintain on our kill target, kidney shot is now the PvP thing, then I wonder if Outlaw will overall start doing more damage in PvP because of this change. Maybe Blizzard will end up buffing us in the long run, but it also makes us less unique than the other specs, but more baseline, which might just be better for the game and better for Outlaw because it means a more consistent damage, at least within the PvP environment. Continuing to read on, Evasion returns its Outlaw defensive ability, with Repose becoming an upgraded talent option. I'm okay with Evasion being base. There's so many abilities you cannot parry, but you can evade, especially the range classes, so Evasion is actually not a terrible choice, and having a choice for Repose, I like that. Retractable Hook talent now also increases speed at which you grapple hook, so you can grapple faster than ever. I actually like that because for PvP and PvE, this could be a meaningful choice instead of just a shorter cooldown for your grapple hook. Just a faster grapple to get out of a situation really quickly could create a really interesting part of gameplay. These don't seem like big changes for Outlaw, but for me, as Outlaw main, I'm personally excited. I cannot wait to try this stuff out for myself. I wonder how they roll the bones mechanic and between the eyes debuff thing, how that would feel. I would love to play with Repose and the new retractable hook. There's so many new things, but it seems that Blizzard is trying to keep what Outlaw is about, but change it. And I wonder if these changes are going to make the spec more new player friendly, because a lot of people feel like the RNG overall, the bones and Outlaw Rogue is just not that new player friendly. I wonder if that's going to change the stipulation at all, but also wonder how this is going to change for someone like me who's been playing the spec for a while. Is the spec going to feel better? I am optimistic, but I just can't say off the bat. It's not as cut and dry as Assassination was. Then we have Subtlety, and Subtlety, always looking for advantage in combat. All Subtlety rogues have mastered the art of Find Weakness, previously a talent, thank God. Attack from stealth and other abilities allow the rogue to bypass the target's armor, so other abilities besides attacking from stealth, interesting. But also causes additional shadow damage when they are struck by Eviscerate. Find Weakness can also mark a large number of targets when needed to set up for the new area effect finisher, Shadow Vault. I'm hoping for backflips and insane looking finishers, which also assaults targets with their Find Weakness for additional shadow damage. Shadow Dance gains the power of Dark Shadow, previously a talent, to increase all damage active at the cost of less frequent dancing. Rupture returns the Subtlety's damage over time bleed finisher move instead of the Shadowy Nightblade. However, they'll still have access to movement speed reduction and heal reduction through wound and crippling poison, so now we know wound poison is coming back into the game. Sub-Rogue never really had any issues on single target within PvE and always had an issue with AoE, so this Find Weakness to a group of enemies with an AoE finisher that's focused on AoE damage, that is a good step in the right direction. Blizzard has always had an issue with sub and AoE, so hopefully this spec will just feel better with dungeons and raids, because it always had the most amount of customization talents, but just never did enough damage compared to the other two specs. Even with corruptions, even corruption couldn't carry this spec. For PvP, the spec is going to be huge, as there's extra shadow damage with Eviscerate, and Rupture returns as a bleed, which can be cloaked off or anything like that. There's still the slow, and Wound Poison up provides the healing reduction, and oh man, all the baseline damage with Dark Shadow for Shadow Dance. I think this is good. Blizzard is finally deciding, you know what? We want for sub-rogues to be all about burst, Dark Shadow, baseline into Shadow Dance. We want them to have big damage whenever they dance, not more dances or anything weird like that, but Find Weakness is a main mechanic. Shadow Dance doing a lot of damage is a main mechanic. Let's build the spec around it instead of giving that as a choice for the player. Hey, do you want to have a bursty dance, or maybe do you want to have more Find Weaknesses, or whatever you might want. So this is good to finally define the spec as what it should be. It's going to help it in PvE, and I think it's only going to make it better in PvP. Overall, I'm very impressed with what Blizzard is doing with rogues. I'm glad that they're solidifying Subtlety. I'm glad that they're making tweaks to Outlaw, and it looks like Assassination is still going to be a old reliable for the future expansion. Overall, very good job. I am very happy with abilities like Shiv and Ambush being returned, the bleeds and the poison stuff that Blizzard is doing, the debuff playstyle for Outlaw. I cannot wait to try all this stuff out to see how all these abilities work. And then we also didn't even look at talents, and I guess majority of those talents maybe are ready for some testing, but we don't know. Blizzard just released this stuff and I just want to cover it ASAP. Overall looks amazing, and this only scratches the surface of what other classes are getting. So I think I'll make a separate video talking about all the changes that are recorded so far that all classes are getting when it comes to Shadowlands in a separate video. But thank you guys so much for checking out this one with a rogue in-depth look. So far, looks very promising. As an Outlaw main, I'm very happy, and as a rogue main, I'm very excited to test all those specs out. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed. I'll see all of you in another video.